Hello, hello. This is Jeff Ignatowski with True Crime Myths, the Legends, and more. And tonight we have an incredible episode for you guys. One of the things I've been really wanting to kind of dive into because it's always been, a deep fascination of mine throughout the years. I actually kind of started in this end of things even before I got to, true crime, true crime. I've always been fascinated by, conspiracy and UFOs and all of the like. And so tonight we have an incredible guest with us, Paul Vecchiet, and hopefully I got that one right. And you know me, guys. I'm not the best with the words, but we have him. He is the author of the Disclosure Paradox, book that came out several years ago and just got an update that released in February of 2025. And so, really looking forward to hearing about that and talking about UFOs and government cover-ups and all of these different things that uh, you know the X Files and things like that we've all watched over the years that all fascinate us. These things that are unknown and we want to know more. So really excited to have Paul on here. So let's bring him on now and we will get moving. How's it going, Paul?
Hello, Jeff. Fine, thanks.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, man. Uh, so tell us a little bit about the book starting out.
All right. The book, The Disclosure Paradox, could be a autobiography because the main character is based on myself and events that have happened to me. I I put the main character on a journey to guide the reader through my development on how I got my belief systems through various experiences, both on Earth and in meditative experiences. All of the characters are based on real people. I obviously it's fiction, so that I don't reveal their names. I protect their identities. One uh, is a general officer in the military, um, and uh, all of the places that I highlight in the book. Area 51, Dulce Base, Edwards Air Force Base, Mount Shasta. Those are all, based on fact, but the events that happen in the book to guide the plot uh, are fictional mostly. But any of the events that happen to the main character, myself, meditative experiences, psychic readings by characters. That's all based on real experiences. So what the book is it guides the reader to understand the link between the extraterrestrial phenomenon and our spirituality.
Hmm.
And when I say I labeled it the disclosure paradox because disclosure is the pressure for the public to apply pressure on governments, on people that are in charge, to reveal information that they may have regarding extraterrestrials, UFOs, and their technology. And I have surmised, based on testimony, based on my meditative experiences, based on a medium that acts as she's a psychic woman, and she acts as a medium between myself and a advanced extraterrestrial race that they call themselves the Watchers. Uh,
Hmm.
and the information that I get from them through her is also in this book. So the hypothesis is that we're not ready for disclosure, and the reason is, and you have to go back to uh, when we dropped the bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That was like a fire alarm throughout the universe, because our scientists didn't understand that that release of energy, that amount of energy in a short amount of time actually affected other dimensions, not just ours. So that was the first step in the universal community, understanding that we are children playing with matches, that we are not spiritually evolved to have that type of technology. And ever since then, there had been a spike in activity in sightings, and mostly around areas that involve nuclear technology.
Yeah.
So we are under what's called a technological and social quarantine. And the reason is because of our DNA, which is the real original sin, not what the Bible says. Our DNA is what makes us violent, barbaric, having an irrational obsession with possessions, and being racist to the point of being genocidal. And you combine that with our intelligence, which we are very highly intelligent compared to others. It makes us a very dangerous species. So if we were to get disclosure, if there would be official disclosure and there would be official contact, there eventually be a transfer of technology. And with that transfer of technology, our worst parts of humanity, greed and hatred, all that stuff, would take that technology, weaponize it, and use it against those that gave it to us, doing it in the name of something like manifest destiny or the Monroe Doctrine, or weapons of mass destruction, or going after resources that are rare, or even spreading Christianity. All of those excuses would be used to go after these aliens that are different from us. And that's why we are under a technological quarantine. So it's not in our best interest to have disclosure yet, because we are still spiritually corrupt.
Yeah. We see it all the time. We still go after people that are different or have more than we do, and are we feel like we should have what they have, and we're not at a place where people are ready to be able to understand how to live peaceably with one another and with other people. And it's really humanity is so flawed in so many ways, and we really
Exactly.
struggle with understanding uh, what should happen and how to live in accord with one another. And I think until we figure that out, maybe we should be limited, because we would ultimately end up destroying ourselves,
Right.
because we're not at a place where we could understand or accept that kind of technology.
Right. So there are a couple things. First of all, our governments have been warned about having technology and developing a technology that could be a weapon, and so they're well aware of it. And that's why there is such a such a counter response to disclosure. That's why they are what's called dragging their heels. That's why they are delaying. That's why they are giving us disinformation. It's to protect us. It's to protect them, because they have been warned that if we were to develop a weapon system and actually able to have the technology to go beyond Earth, beyond the stars, that there would be a preemptive strike. Okay,
Hmm.
so that's the one thing. And you mentioned, other civilizations. So there's a common and a very simple equation throughout the universe. And what it is, it compares our spirituality with our technology. So where we are at is we have a very high level of technology and a very low level of spirituality. When you have that, you have a greater propensity of self-eradication.
Yeah.
When what you see around us, when people see all these crafts, and some of them are really from us too, but some are from other other civilizations, when they see them, those civilizations have been around much longer than us. We're probably more intelligent than they are, but they're more developed. And they're more developed because they have understood how important it is to have a high level of spirituality equal to your technology. And so when you have that, there's a greater chance of surviving. Now, when you have a higher level of spirituality and a lower level of technology, you have a greater chance of being assimilated by a more advanced race. So it's a very simple equation.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm interested. There have been talks recently, at least in the news media and stuff, about things going up into space that could potentially have nuclear weapons that could fire down here, and I would think that that would be a huge concern for some of these other entities out there that are looking down and seeing that and seeing the possibility of those things not just being turned on us, but being turned elsewhere that could cause some serious shock waves, I guess.
Absolutely. One thing that I need to mention too is that the universal community is more concerned about the planet than they are about us. Why is that? Because the planet was designed to be a school for our spirits. Our spirits are linked to our body through our brain, a gland in our brain. Okay, the spirits are energies, and the only ways that they can learn about life is actually being linked to us humans, where they can learn about love, about pain, suffering, creativity, beauty. They can't do that themselves as energies. They have to do it through us and experience the human experience through us. So the extraterrestrials, they call this Earth School for a reason. And it's important that it continues. So when they see us threatening the planet, they will intervene. They've done it a couple times where they have stopped nuclear exchange between ourselves and the Russians. At one time, it was in 1967, Malmstrom Air Force Base, where they shut down an entire flight of silos, and that was well documented. They also did it in Russia at one time in the 60s. So they're not concerned about us because we can be replaced, but the planet can't.
Yeah. Wow. It is there is so much that we don't understand in our limited understanding. I was just having a conversation about this earlier, that it is so hard to conceive of many of these things, just because we are limited. We only have the experiences that we have, and we wonder why people can't explain things. They see something, and they don't really understand it because we have no frame of reference to understand some of these things that are happening. How do you explain something that you have no concept of understanding, because it's not part of our current human experience? So I think it's fascinating when we talk about some of this stuff that is just very much on a different plane of existence that we can even begin to conceive.
Yeah. One thing that I write in the book is that the failure of organized religion, the supreme failure of organized religion, is using the human paradigm to try and explain something that they don't understand, which is God, because it's beyond human. I myself, however, was given the gift of seeing it, of seeing the proof, and it was through one of my meditations. And what happened was that I saw a cloud of indigo, and with that cloud of indigo, I felt a euphoria, which is what people say they feel like between life and death, and during a near-death experience. And it was an amazing feeling. And as I got closer to the cloud dissipated, and all I saw was indigo flashes all over the place in a cluster. And as I got closer, this euphoria was even greater. And that's when I got the message of what was going on. Those flashes were spirits between lives that were downloading their past life or uploading their next life. And together, all those energies combine in one mass consciousness. And that's what we call God. So when the Bible says that God is within us and God is around us, it's true, because our spirit is actually part of that source energy. When it passes, they join up, and that's when they actually become a greater force.
Wow. So, uh, I'm interested. Uh, there's been lots of talk here, especially here in the States, about releasing all the documents, right? The documents that they're going to release, and give us all the information and let us know. And we have the Pentagon, basically saying that yes, there are UFOs out there, and that there are things that we can't explain, and coming right up to the line of making an admission and then not making an admission. And so it's what do you think about all of that?
All right. So first of all, because of the internet age, the more information is out there, the better it is for whoever wants to keep it, because people can't discern between hoax and truth anymore.
Yeah.
It is so difficult to determine what is fact with all of the technology that we have right now on media, and all of the tools that could be used. And it benefits them, because anything that is brought up, especially for people that are naysayers, they will say, no, that's not true. Doesn't matter. So the stuff that I have in my book, I call it fiction, because I leave it up to the individual to do research and to find out what is truth and what is hoax, or what is made up. I don't try and do hoaxes, but I have made up some things in the book to move the plot along. So in this day and age, the more information is out there, the better. That the governments don't even acknowledge it anymore. It used to be that they would deny. They don't do that anymore. They just let it go, and let us, decide for ourselves whether it's true or not. I can tell you this. In one of my contacts, there was a woman, and her mother was CIA. And before her mother passed away, she gave her documents that proved about the Dulce base, underground base, which is the joint laboratory between reptilians and mercenaries. And she also had documents about alien autopsies. And one document that I value is the briefing document from the Truman administration to the Eisenhower administration about Majestic 12, its establishment, and the mission behind it. So I have all of that, and I've used that to set up the plot in my book.
Wow. That is incredible. I know, there is so much out there. I know several people that are out there doing research, and gathering things together. And there's a lot out there if you know where to look, and you know where to dig. There are things that are out there,
Sure.
and uh, This is funny. I'm going to mention another one of my favorite shows ever to listen to. You know, growing up, or not even growing up, when I was in college and afterwards, I worked a third shift job, and I would listen to Coast AM,
Yeah.
and you know some of the different speakers and things on there, and you know, you would often get people that were, you know, that were in the military and things like that, that would come on and share their experiences and the things that they had seen, and you know, all of that. And it's just it was just such a wealth of information and knowledge
Hmm.
that people have put out there. And I have many friends that have been guests on Coast to Coast numerous times. That it's always cool, you know, being able to get there and to hear directly from them and read their books, and you know, just understand this whole other uh, idea of, you know, life and spirituality and everything. I think it's all fascinating.
Yeah. I have one I guess experience that kind of put me on the path that people can relate to, and that you could probably find fascinating. And it was when I was an officer in the Air Force. Um, I was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I was construction manager. The facility that my project was in was called Foreign Technology Division, and it was a two-story warehouse building. It was converted into a secure office building. Um, it was surrounded by motion detectors, and even if you had a top secret clearance, you had to be escorted around the facility. Once you got through the double doors and you signed your name and you got your escort, all the doors had no numbers, no names. There was no directory, and whoever worked in one office, the next office over, they didn't know what was going on. So it was
Oh
very
wow.
compartmented, right? My project was on the second floor, and um, by the way, Foreign Technology Division, their mission was to take information from that was collected by intelligence about other weapon systems that other countries have, look at their strengths, their weaknesses, the opportunities that we can have on taking advantage of their weaknesses. And then what they would do is they would make reports and hand it over across the base where research and development was being done at Aeronautical Systems Division. So, and over there, they would actually develop the weapon systems. So anyway, my project was on the second floor, and it was for a computer system. At that time, it was in the late 80s, and computers were huge. So the entire second floor was gutted, and I went up there because I needed to make sure that the drawings that we had, which were called as-built drawings, were accurate. Now, as-built means that it's the condition of the facility prior to construction. So I went up there, looked at the facility, and then I started looking through the drawings, and I noticed that there was a sheet that said basement on it, and I looked at it, and this was a warehouse building. Normally, you don't put basements in warehouses because it's not economical. So I looked at it, and the floor plan and the outline matched the building. So I reasoned, okay, there's a basement there, but I couldn't see how you can get access to it. Anyway, I flipped through the drawing some more, and I noticed that there was a detailed floor plan showing a 70 by 90 cryogenic chamber in the basement. And that's when I realized that there was very sensitive information in the set of drawings. I looked at my escort, making sure that they didn't see that I saw what I saw, and I just rolled it up, and I wasn't stressed out or anything. I just rolled everything up, and I kept that information for 5 years after I left the service. And only when I read um, the book by Phil Corso, The Day After Roswell, where he actually describes sending the cadavers to Wright-Patterson, did I make the connection. So
Wow.
yeah.
So you don't know this, but I live about 40 minutes from Wright Patterson right now.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm in Cincinnati,
Yeah.
So, Dayton is not that far.
No.
And I've got a good friend of mine that lives about 5 minutes from Wright Pat.
Okay.
So, we've got of course, they talk about all kinds of things being seen there in the air, and whether that is, our technologies being, tested out, or otherworldly technologies. There's always been all kinds of stories about Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and the things that have gone on there, all the way back at, just like you mentioned with the Roswell crash,
Right.
and the transporting of extraterrestrials to that facility, and all of that is just fascinating stuff.
Yeah. So that kind of got me on that track to be more inquisitive, because obviously something's not people aren't telling us what's going on for real, and I just I, that combined with my skepticism about organized religion, and my fascination with space travel from the Gemini and the Mercury and the Apollo programs, that all combined to put me in the direction of where I was headed, and what I eventually became.
Nice. So here, I mean, this begs this question. Uh, what are your thoughts on, this is a hot topic too, but what are your thoughts on the moon landing?
I think it was real. Not only that, but I think they saw something, and there's a reason why we haven't been back,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we've been told not to come back. And the watchers who communicated to me through the medium, they indicated to me that they used the moon as a listening post.
mm,
So um, I I think there's there's a lot of technology over there that is not of this earth, and it's been there probably for a very long time.
yeah. It's interesting because there are photos and things that are floating around there about, different monuments and things on the
Yeah.
moon,
Yeah.
and all of this stuff, and you wonder, and that's always the question. We were there once, and if we could get there, why haven't we been back? It was always thought that, by the year 20 whatever, we were going to colonize the moon. It's the closest place to us
Right.
to be able to get to, and it, theoretically could solve a lot of problems for us here, but we've never done that, and there's never even been a return trip, and it always begs that question, like, why? What in the world did they see up there that changed their mind, and everything was, shut down? Why, now we're talking about going and, looking at Mars,
Yes.
but Mars is way far away
Right.
compared to our own moon that is there. So it's always interesting, and then you wonder again, that goes right under, the governmental secrets, and them not telling us everything about what's going on out there and what they actually know
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that whoever had been to the moon, Armstrong, Aldrin, all those guys, I'm pretty sure that they were briefed on being secretive about things. Obviously they came back with the information, and they were told not to say anything.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Uh, you know, they got uh, to be the flag bearers of, the great accomplishment, but not tell us anything else about the experience.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and I would tend to agree. I think we actually did go there. I don't think it was in a California soundstage.
No.
Uh, I think we actually went there, but I think that there was something else that was found that they decided was not worth making a return.
Right. Right. Or they were advised, just don't come back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Wow. So So what do you think about, because there seems, there's all these shows out there now. I am fascinated, and I have several friends that are on the show. The paranormal caught on camera, and like you mentioned before, we're so sophisticated with tools that we have now to fake a lot of this stuff, and we've gotten to a point in our technology where we're at a place where, like, you can't even know like what's true and what's not, and
Right.
who's actually there speaking to you, because they can do things with AI and things like that now, that they can do a whole recording of a celebrity or something, because they can use those clips to complete a whole message, directly, specifically geared and tailored to your question or your conversation. And, you don't know if it's actually that person or a computer program that has
Right.
created all of that. And it is unbelievable to me that we are at that place in our in our technology, where we really don't know what's true. I've always believed, what happens 1,000 years from now when we're all dead and gone, and somebody digs up a spot in the middle of the desert, and they find all these DVDs or something about all these movies and stuff that we've been watching, and then they take that for history,
Yeah.
and then they wonder, like, what is wrong with these people? Like, why would they do this? Because there is some wild stuff. Uh,
Yeah. Or if they dug up a copy of Scarface, right?
yeah, yeah. There's that movie out there right now, and I don't know if you've seen this or not, but Sinners just came out
Oh, I
in
heard
the
about
movie
that.
theater, and it's gotten really, really great reviews. I actually saw it the night that it came out, and the movie is just really, really well done. Very, very much in the same vein as From Dusk Till Dawn by Robert Rodriguez, and this idea, it starts out as one movie. From Dusk Till Dawn starts out as a crime movie with George Clooney and why can't I think of his name right now? Uh, anyway, the famous director and everything. But those two out there doing these crimes, going through the country, and then they end up in Mexico, and all of a sudden it's now a vampire movie. Like, where the hell
Oh,
the
wow.
vampires come from? And so Sinners is very much like that. It
Wow.
starts out in like the 1920s, and these two brothers are there, and they're like building like a juke joint there, and they're dealing with all the social ills of 1920s culture, and racism and things like that,
Hmm.
and they're trying to make something better for themselves, and they get there, and all of a sudden there are vampires, and it's fascinating, because it really, if you look at it from an outside perspective, if you were to look at any of that without understanding anything about us as people and look at that, it blends history and the supernatural so well that people would wonder, like, how is this possible?
Oh.
And
Hmm.
it's fascinating to watch some of that, and I always watch those things with kind of that mindset, like, what would I think 100 years from now, not knowing any of this, not knowing that this was a movie, like, what would this look like to me?
Yeah.
It always fascinating to think about that, because I think people would think all kinds of things. They'd be looking around like, where are all these monsters at? We got plenty of monsters. They just don't necessarily look like the ones with the fangs and the werewolves that we see on the screen sometimes.
Hmm. Well, you
So
mentioned monsters, and I don't. mentioned in the book. I was going to include them in my book, but my wife said, no, that's too much. But what I hypothesize is that Bigfoot is an extraterrestrial sentinel to protect the wilderness, which is why sometimes when they have Bigfoot sightings, that there's also some UFOs nearby.
Yeah.
So that's what my hypothesis is about Bigfoot.
Interesting. There's lots of things out there when you start talking cryptids
Yeah,
and these different ideas, and the combination of those things are very, very interesting, because there's a lot of different cryptids that also come with UFO sightings and stuff, around that, which is always interesting. Even like Mothman is one,
sure.
that there's always been different sightings around that, and lots of speculation, and it's fascinating how much is out there that we really don't know.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
know that the disclosure paradox is also a series, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
and so talk a little bit about that, because I know there are other books as well.
Yes. Um, so the uh, the sequel was actually the third book that I wrote, and I didn't intend to write this third book. I Because I wrote the first book, and then I wrote a prequel based on one of the characters in the first book, Katrina, which is based on a real person. So when I got to know this real person, and she told me her life story, I thought, wow, this would make a really good story. And she allowed me to fictionalize her in this prequel, but it wasn't as popular as we thought it would be. And I thought, I'm done writing. You know, I did I did what they told me to do. They told me I was supposed to be a counselor and informer. I took the information that they gave me in meditation through the contacts and dreams and all that stuff, and nothing happened. So um, a Benedictine monk, a former Benedictine monk, searched in Google extraterrestrials and religion, or God or something like that, and he found my first book, and he liked it. And he liked it to the point where he actually friended me, and then he sent me messages. He says, "You know what's missing from this book?" He said, "Is the Shroud of Turin."
Mm.
And I thought, okay, that's interesting. So what he did is he sent me about 300 documents, little by little. He would send me research papers from scientists and researchers on the shroud from all over the world, on every aspect of the shroud that justifies its existence. And I started reading. I thought, wow, actually, this could really make for a good story, and it ties in with my hypothesis. So I put together an outline, sent it to him. He liked it. Then 6 months later, I came up with a manuscript, sent it to him. He liked it so much that he actually has written the foreword for this novel, and that this is the sequel, which will be the second book, even though it's the third book I wrote. So it it was this third book that I went through again through the whole system of trying to find an agent and a publisher, and this was the book that got the attention of the literary community. And when they found out that and the publisher liked it, it actually was an editor that helped me out, and he had a publisher that he worked with. He sent the manuscript to the publisher. They liked it, and then when they found out that I had a series going on, then they took on the whole series, and I had the contract with the publisher for the whole series. So that's how that happened. So this second book, which is a sequel, is about a conspiracy to destroy the Shroud of Turin, and
Mm.
it connects with the disclosure paradox because it links the extraterrestrials, the malevolent extraterrestrials, to the quest to gain possession of Jesus's DNA to weaponize it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it starts out with a murder in the Vatican, and the murder person is a friend of one of the guys in the first book, who is a former Army Ranger. They were together in Iraq. He was in the Italian Army. The other guy was in the U.S. Army. They were together at Nasiriyah, and that's how it starts out. And so it's not a who done it, because we know who does it. It's a why done it. And so we find out why there is this conspiracy to go after the shroud.
Wow, that's it sounds very Dan Brown.
It goes beyond Dan Brown.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. There's an entire chapter in that book that is just scientists around the table talking to our investigators about the crime, and talking about all of the facts behind the shroud, one by one. Archaeology, history, botany, forensics, hematology, all that stuff is all described in detail on the shroud. And that's what the guy that did the forward, who is, by the way, a leading researcher on the shroud. He's done research for 40 years. So he is a prominent, world-renowned researcher, which gives this book a lot of impact.
Yeah.
So that chapter is what really should make the reader interested, because it's all facts. And one of the things that the reader will find out is, first of all, that the blood of Jesus, there's no match. There's no human match for the blood of Jesus. They can't find it. Second, they determined that the DNA is different from human DNA. Third, they have determined that the image on the shroud was done through a radiological event. That his resurrection was actually an event that involved radiation. And to cause that imprint on the linen would take many, many micro-calibrated lasers, all calibrated perfectly to give the depth for that three-dimensional image on that shroud, powered at 18 billion watts. Our most powerful laser is 8 billion watts right now. We can't go to 18 billion. And to actually make that image, the lasers would have to be activated for 1/40,000th of a second so that you don't burn the linen. We don't have that technology. We don't have that technology. But that's all. These are all facts that I found out from scientists and their papers.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah,
I know that's been one of the things, and recently, and there's every so often you'll see new articles come out in the media and stuff about the Shroud of Turin, and it seems like just recently, like in the last week or so, there's been several different articles that have come out.
It's every week something's coming out. Every week something is coming out.
It's incredible, the research and the time, and the people that are doing the work behind that is just unbelievable.
Yeah, you've got physicists, you've got radiologists. It's a physicist that determined this thing about the radiological event. Remember they did a carbon dating on it, and they figured out why the carbon dating was false, because when you apply radiation to a material, you change the makeup of the material, so the carbon dating would obviously be incorrect.
Yeah. It's Wow. You know, uh,
So I can't wait till that comes out in October, and
oh,
that's gonna
okay.
be huge. That's gonna be
Oh,
huge.
I'm excited for that because I am fascinated by all that. I was out today, and you know, I've always been a student of history, and I think it, like all of these things are just incredibly fascinating. Going back and looking at all of this, and of course, you know, here we just passed Easter and stuff, so everybody's kind of talking about that again, and you know, the all of this stuff, and I think it's I think there are so many things that we don't understand around that, and looking at that, and you know, looking at, you know, what are they not telling us about those events? You know, what is not the common knowledge out there? I mean, it's one of the reasons why I started this. I wanted to talk about alternative theories because I think that that is where, like, when we look at things from a holistic perspective and we look at everything that's out there, what do we learn?
Hmm.
And I think it's often very different from what the standard idea is.
All right. So here's a couple other things that you can wrap your mind around. Okay, and I hypothesize this in the book. It's not fact, but the the meditating monk, he likes my ideas. So so here it is. There are over 370 verses in the New Testament that mentions the blood of Christ. Okay,
Yeah.
I think that's not an accident. Also, the mention when they say that the blood of Christ will wash away the sins of the earth, that should not be taken as a metaphor. That actually should be taken literally. Why do I say that? Because my hypothesis is that someday we will have the technology to harvest the DNA of Jesus, be able to take his DNA and repair our own DNA so that we become like him. And then that way our DNA is no more that original sin. And we won't have that problem with greed, with racism, with all of the things that I mentioned of why the extraterrestrials don't want anything to do with us.
Mm, that is incredible. Huh. Yeah, that's fascinating. So I don't know if this and you could tell me this if this is the case because you may not be able to release this. What's the title of that
Oh,
book?
no, it's a Disclosure Paradox, Book 2, Salvation.
Oh, okay, good. Okay,
Because there's
nice.
salvation on many levels. The main
Yeah,
character, Robert Ladd, who is not a main character in the first book, but he becomes the main character in the second book. You know, he gets saved. There's a save. They saved the shroud, of course, and then there's a salvation of a couple of other characters from the Archons. You know who the Archons are? Have you heard of the
yes,
Archons?
yeah, yeah,
All right, so the Archons are the ones that are after the shroud, and uh, and you know, some may say that there's a plot hole there. No, because here's the deal. Um, the hypothesis is that first of all, and this is true, um, if an Archon attacks you, and this is based on testimony from that general officer I told you about, um, an Archon attacked him, and because he's a very religious person, he said, "In the name of Jesus, I command you to leave." And sure enough, you know, it went away through the ceiling just like it appeared. So my hypothesis is that they fear Jesus they so much that they don't even want to hear his name.
mm.
And it, and it's also possible that his blood may actually be uh, venomous to them or poisonous to them. Kind of like, you know, if they touch it, you know, something would be, or even if they got close to it. So they needed a human to do the crime for them, and that's
Oh,
what's
wow.
happening in the book. They team up with a man who has um, a vendetta against the Vatican, and so he does that. He joins up with them to do that, and that's his form of revenge, because he was one of the children that was abused by priests back when he was younger, and so that's his motivation.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and you said that comes out in October?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys have plenty of time to get the disclosure paradox and start reading that so that you are ready for October when salvation comes.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
super
In
cool.
fact, the guy who did for, his name is Joe Marino. He invited me to the 2025 symposium and conference on the Shroud of Turin in St. Louis. So I'm going to be there in August, and I'm delighted. I'm honored that he invited me.
Oh, that's super cool. I was just out at a show in Kansas City, and it was a Paracon out there, and next to me was a guy from South Dakota who carves what he calls alienite, and it
Oh,
is meteorite from a place in the Dakotas. And I have a piece
oh,
here
look at that.
that
Nice.
I've been working on, getting it made into a cane topper.
Uh-huh.
And so my buddy Gary out there, who at some point will come on to the podcast because he has an incredible story around all of that stuff, and he is an amazing guy. He was sitting next to me, and we had met previously at another Paracon up in Michigan, and we were there and we were both vending, and we had met then, but we didn't really get a chance to talk a whole bunch. But this time he was directly next to me, and so he made a comment about the fact that he was in his 70s, and I
Wow.
turned to him and I said, "There's no way, brother. There's no way. Like, I would not believe that." And he laughed and he said, "Man, you should have seen me before now, because I looked like I was in my 80s." And I looked at him and I said, "Man, what the hell you been doing?" And he's like, "Well, this is what I've been doing." And he said, "Since I've been doing this," he said, "I have been in effect like aging backwards." Because this guy, I took a picture of him and
Oh, wow.
and I'm like, "Brother,
Oh,
like, I would not have said past, late 50s." And he looks great for his age. And
wow.
you don't know this, but just a couple less, well, no, it's been just over a month ago, a month and a day now, I had two strokes.
Hmm.
And so I was, and I'm 44. And so it's like, it's it was crazy that just, about a month before that happened, I met Gary, and we learned a lot about one another, and just a very, very fascinating guy. But
Wow.
yeah,
I'd
yeah.
love to
So
my make so that item that you have there has the same properties, you think?
yeah, this is just a piece. So what he does is he's contracted with the guy to go on to the farm there and harvest it, and then he
Wow.
takes it and he carves it.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, "Well, where do you get the inspiration for the?" And he said, "Really, it carves itself. Like, and he does all kinds of different carvings.
Nice.
Some of them are different crafts. Some of
Yeah.
them are different alien life forms and stuff." And we were standing there and we were talking, and he was like, I was looking at it and I was like, "Man, I really want a piece." Not even for any other reason, is I love your artwork. I want to support what you're doing, and I love this whole idea. And then I really wanted a piece. I was like, "Man, if it worked for you, I mean, I got all this gray hair. I need some help." And so he was like looking around and he's picking them up, and he said, "Well, what about this one?" And it was the one that I had my eye on anyway.
Mhm.
And which is really interesting because, of course, you have this image here, of course,
Sure.
very, very gray alien image.
Yep.
And it was always the one that terrified me the most when I was a kid. And I have a copy here at the house, of course, Whitley Strieber book Communion,
Yeah.
right? And that gray alien on the cover was always like, as a kid, I'd have nightmares about that thing. And even now, like I go in my room and I have that series of books, and I look at the cover and I'm like, I get the willies, you know. But it was just fascinating that I ended up being drawn to this one specifically, and yeah. So it was funny because I sent Gary a picture of me. I was in the ICU, and my wife actually brought this to me in the ICU, and so I had it there with me when I was in intensive care, and it stayed there with me the whole time. So I don't know, what effect it may have had or anything, but what I can tell you is I didn't have the brain swelling that they were worried about, and I never
Wow.
had to go have brain surgery. So you know, I don't know that I count it to that, but I'm grateful that I didn't have to have that for sure.
Wow.
Cool, man. Well, one of the things that I want to make sure is after this, make sure that you send me a link to the book on Amazon or whatever, or wherever you want people to go pick it up. I'll make sure that I put that in the description so that they can go and pick up your stuff.
Well,
I
I have a website.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Send me that too. That for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I have my own book out there, and I know that Amazon takes a good piece. So it's nice to go to the website because it helps everybody out a little bit more.
Yeah. Sure.
But yeah, send that to me, and I'll put it in the description so that people can go right there. They can also be notified in October when the new stuff comes out, and they can be first in line to go pick it up.
Okay. Sounds great.
All right, man. Anything else you want to leave us with before we go?
Yes. The preface of the book um, guides the plot, and it explains about our destiny. It explains about fate. Um, and people need to know a couple things. First is that um, other people have a greater influence on your life than you have on your own. Second, we are here to make life better for others instead of making life better for ourselves at the expense of others. If we just did that, we would certainly improve our spirituality. If we want, really want to be part of that universal community, that is shown like in Star Trek, um, we've got to make that change.
Absolutely. You know, uh, I've always tried to do that and tried to, you know, I've always believed that by helping others, without looking for them coming back to help us, ultimately always puts us in a better place.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think whether you believe that that's karmically speaking or whatever, I've always believed that it never hurts. It only helps to give other people opportunities and to help them, and ultimately, good things will come back.
Hmm. Right.
So yeah, all right, man. Well, anything else?
No, no, except the third book, which is going to be the prequel about Katrina, which is going to be called "What Doesn't Kill Her." That'll come out in June of 2026. So, and
Okay, okay,
I got an idea for the fourth book, and the fourth book is going to be about the Hadron Collider.
nice, cool. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm for sure going to pick up the Disclosure Paradox,
Nice.
and I'm excited to check out Salvation in October because that sounds just incredible. I uh, some people know this about me, some people don't, but I also pastored for about 10 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I've done a lot of my speaking was all for my exegetical research, and so I have a background in a lot of that stuff, and specifically prophecy and things like that. I thought was very fascinating, which all runs in line with a lot of these things. So I've always been fascinated by that history and by those different events. So
Mhm.
so I appreciate what you're doing and all of that because it is I think there are lots of things out there that are pieces of the puzzle,
Yes.
and information is
Yes.
always good.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So, Paul, man, I appreciate it. I appreciate you being on here and taking time. Like I said, we'll add those links to the bottom
All
so
right.
that people can go and find your stuff. And again, I appreciate you being here, man. And I look forward to talking to you more soon as the new books come out. Maybe we'll do this again for the releases so that people can get real excited and get that stuff.
All right. Sounds
All right,
great.
man. Well,
Thank you.
thank you, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
All right, guys, thank you so much for being here and being here for another episode of True Crime Myths, Legends, and More. I hope you enjoyed this special episode. Talking about all the things that we don't always talk about. So good stuff. And remember to comment below, send us your thoughts, and we'll try to answer as much as we can. And next Tuesday, as long as everything is going good as far as my health and everything else. We will do a live episode where we can talk with Mary and Sherry, and also discuss this episode and do a recap. So make sure that you're on here for that, and that you're in there and you have dialogue with us, because you guys can get heard and share your thoughts there. So I appreciate you, and we will see you on the next episode. Talk to y'all soon.